Welcome to the Create and Grow Show. I'm your host, Georgi Todorov, and today we have Marc Andre as our guest. Marc Andre has been building online businesses since 2007. He has built and sold several businesses, including six different six figures exits. The total of the sales is more than $2 million. Hi, Mark. How's it
Hey,
going?
George. I'm good. How are you?
Great. I'm very happy to have you as a guest on the Create and Grow show because you are a serial entrepreneur, someone who has built and sold multiple online businesses, not just one, but you have done it again and again. So that's great. You know the recipe.
Yeah, I've definitely had a few experiences over the years.
I hope that you can share a lot of value bombs with the Create and Grow listeners in this episode and they can learn a lot from you.
I will do my best.
Thanks. Let's get started then. Tell us about those two big sites that you mentioned to me earlier. You sold both of them for 500,000 each. That's
Yeah,
super
so
impressive.
so one was actually the first site I started. I started in 2007 as a side hustle while I had a full-time job, and it was a web design blog that I grew from 2007. I went full-time 2008. 2008, I quit my job and started working on the site full time. And I worked on that until 2013 when I sold it. In the last year or so that I had it, it was really more of a part time thing. I'd kind of um, scaled back my hours in anticipation of selling it. And then the site that I started in 2012, so like a year before I sold the other one, I started a photography site. And my hope was that I would have something, kind of already growing a little bit by the time I sold the web design blog. And so that was the one that once I sold the web design blog, I put more focus into the photography blog, grew that one. And that was actually two sites or two very similar photography sites
Hmm.
um, that I wound up selling together for $500,000 in 2016.
Great. And how did you monetize those websites? Only with display ads or anything else?
The web design blog, the first one I started initially, it was only monetized with display ads. It was well, I guess going back a little bit further. So my initial purpose for the site was to use it as like a portfolio to get web design work. I had done some websites for people on the side um, just for some extra money, and I was looking to make a little bit more money. I didn't have any big visions for it. I wasn't really looking for it to turn into anything full time. I just wanted to make some extra money from some web design projects, and so I set up this site and planned to monetize it with services. And pretty quickly, as I got into it, I realized I didn't really like the services. It was working to an extent, but I realized that I liked growing the blog a lot more because I was using a blog to get traffic and then funnel that into trying to generate leads for the services. And the blog was growing really well, and so I realized that I really enjoyed working on the blog more than doing the services. So I kind of shifted my focus a few months in and decided just to work on growing the blog. So once I did that, then it was monetized with ads, and I monetized only with display ads for probably, I think it was about 2 years. And then I started selling some digital products. I had digital products that were created and sold for other designers, for graphic designers, things like Photoshop templates, icon sets. Photoshop brushes were big back then. They're not so popular now. Basically, different resources that people would use in Photoshop um, to to design things. And then I sold those products in addition to the ads. And then later on, I also added affiliate marketing in there. That was more like the last year that I owned
Hmm.
the site, trying to maximize revenue in preparation to sell the site. I focused on growing affiliate revenue. And so by the time I sold the site, the revenue was fairly evenly split 3 different ways between ads, affiliate revenue, and the digital products.
Okay,
With
that's interesting. Did you write the articles yourself or you hired writers?
I wrote most of the articles myself. Towards the
Okay.
end, I had a freelance writer who did some of the work. I think that was probably just the last year of the site was hiring a freelance writer, and I think there was only one freelance writer that I used. But before that, I had done all the content myself, other than publishing some guest posts here and there that I didn't pay for.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but yeah, that was the approach with that particular site.
Can we get deeper on the affiliate topic? And I want you to tell me about the affiliate partners that you had back then. How many affiliate partners you had, and what offers you pushed to your audience?
I can't remember exactly how many programs I was in. I would say I probably had 5 to 10 that generated some sort of consistent revenue, meaning at least like, I don't know, 100 or a few $100s a month. The biggest ones were WordPress themes. So I was affiliate of different WordPress theme shops, probably anywhere from 5 to 10 different theme shops. And there were 3 or 4 that did pretty well, pretty consistently. None of them were huge individually, but added up, all of them were fairly significant. I also had some things like email marketing services. Aweber was one that I used
Mm-hmm.
back then. At the time, I used it for the site's email list, and so that was the one I promoted. And that they have like the affiliate program pays monthly based on how long the person you referred stays as a customer. So it wasn't a one-time upfront
Yeah,
payment; it was
recurring
an
commission.
ongoing. So those were probably the big ones. I think I also did okay with Shopify. So it was like different platforms for building a website, whether it was WordPress or Shopify, and a few smaller things like the email marketing stuff.
Did you test all those products and services that you recommended as an affiliate partner?
The services, like I said, Aweber I used for the email list. The WordPress themes, no, I didn't, because there were a lot of different themes being promoted, and there's no way I would be able to test all of them. Like for example, a blog post might be a list of um, 25 different photography WordPress themes, or 25 different themes based on whatever particular theme. And so it was more of a list. I did look at customer feedback, and I did have some theme stores that I trusted. Like for example, if I used a theme from Elegant Themes was a big one that I promoted back then. I was a customer of Elegant Themes, actually still am. I don't actively use it, but I have a lifetime membership. And I was, at that time they had more themes than they do now. They've kind of just focused on Divi. But since I was familiar with the theme shop, I maybe didn't use a particular theme, but I was familiar with the creator of the theme. And
Mm-hmm.
so, I would recommend those. Um, but no, I did not use every single product.
Yeah, it makes sense when you are familiar with the creator of the team, you know that they have high standards and they create quality products. So, yeah, it makes sense. So, you monetized with display ads, with affiliate, and with your own digital products. But you didn't mention anything about sponsored posts. You haven't sold any?
I did a few, not very many at all.
Mm-hmm.
And they were mostly for giveaways. So, like
Mm-hmm.
if somebody wanted to publish a giveaway, host a giveaway at the site where readers would leave a comment to enter a contest, and then they would win the prize, like a WordPress theme or whatever it was. But it wasn't your typical sponsored posts, like guest posts where people are essentially buying a link. Um, and I didn't really have sponsored posts where I was really doing like a review of a particular service or product. It was a few giveaways mostly.
Yeah, I guess that you got many guest posting requests in your inbox, but you ignored
I did,
99% of them.
yeah, I did, like I said, I did publish some free guest posts, but it was mostly people that I knew. I did, if I got an inquiry from somebody that had like a good profile and could give some good writing samples that I could tell it was going to be a decent article. But also, I sold it in 2013, and the number of emails that come in for guest posts and sponsored posts has grown significantly since then.
Hmm.
So yes, I did get them, but not to the same at the same volume that you would get them today.
So you grew the website and you sold it for how much? Half a million?
For $500,000, yeah.
Wow, amazing. I guess that it was making something like 20K a month profit.
Yeah, so it was growing pretty steadily the last year I had it. The last 6 months I owned it, the revenue was over $20,000 each month. I don't remember, the profit may have been slightly below 20,000 at the beginning of that, but I know the last 2 months I had a profit of over 25,000 a month, um, just over.
Yeah.
So it it depends on how far back, if you're looking at the last 3 months or the last 6 months or the last 12 months. But at the end, it was making over 20,000 a month, around 25,000 a month.
How did you sell it back then in 2013? I guess back then was only one marketplace, Flippa, and nothing else.
Yeah, I sold that site to someone in my personal network. Um, it was actually someone who had bought a site from me earlier. So although
Hmm.
that was the first site I started, it wasn't the first site I sold. I started that one in 2007. I started another one in 2008. There was also a web design blog, and I ran both sites for about a year and a half, and then I sold the second site so that I could focus on the main one. So I sold that in 2010, and I kind of sold it through Flippa. I listed it on Flippa.
Hmm.
I had a buyer, and then right after the auction was over, he backed out for personal reasons, and I had a number of people who were interested in it but weren't the high bidder that said, get in touch with me if the buyer backs out. Um, and so one of those people led to the guy who ultimately bought it from me. So he wasn't one of the people who contacted me. He was ultimately he was a friend of someone, and I got put in touch with him. So I said I kind of sold it through Flippa. The exposure came from Flippa, but he actually didn't find me on Flippa. Somebody else did. But anyway, so he bought that site from me. That was just a $50,000 sale, and that was like I said, my first experience selling a website. But we stayed in touch. He had a good experience with the site that he bought from me, and he wound up being interested in the other one and buying that for $500,000 later on.
Hmm. So
He
how
actually
many years did it take to build this $500,000 website? You said that you started it in
started in
2007?
2007. I left my full-time job in 2008, and I sold it in 2013.
Hmm. And what was working back then? Backlinks, a lot of articles.
A lot of articles, relatively speaking. The frequency, posting frequency varied throughout the time I owned it, anywhere from one or two a week to maybe five a week. But I'd say on average, I probably published like 3 blog posts consistently. But I was very consistent throughout it. I never had a span where I went like a month without posting or anything. So it was consistent publishing new content. As far as traffic generation, social media was really big. But social media back like 2007, 2008 was much different than it is today. It was different platforms. Um, this, some of the same concepts applied as far as I was creating content specifically for social media and studying what those audiences responded to and what types of posts got traffic. But the details of the particular platforms were completely different. It was dig.com, Delicious, Stumble
Mm-hmm.
Upon. Those sites were sending a lot of traffic, whereas today they either don't exist or I think Dig still exists, but it's not really a social platform anymore. So obviously those details have changed a lot. I also did pretty well with search traffic, especially after the first couple of years. Search traffic ultimately became by far the biggest source of traffic. Um,
So
also did pretty
you
well with.
found those traffic streams from Delicious, from Stumble Upon. I'm wondering nowadays if they have any equivalents that we you can get easy traffic like that.
Not that I'm aware of. There's
Yeah.
nothing quite the same, um, but I'd say the types of content that I created were fairly similar. The types of content that appealed to social media users were fairly similar to what appeals now. You need uh, a headline that entices people and draws them into clicking on it and visiting the site. And I used a lot of list posts. List posts still work today on most social platforms. If you have an idea for the list that creates attention, that was the biggest thing I used, was list posts. And so those concepts still can work on other platforms, but obviously the details are going to be a lot different.
Yeah. What's happened later after you sold your website? What was the next website?
So the next one was a photography site. There was I'd say a small amount of crossover in the audience between design and photography. For example, there are a lot of people who do graphic design work that also do photography. In some cases, they may do both professionally. In a lot of cases, maybe they're a professional designer and a hobbyist photographer, or maybe they're a professional photographer and hobbyist designer, or maybe they're hobbyist in both. But there is a little bit of a crossover, and that's kind of how I came to the idea of starting a photography site, because I was interested in photography, but I wasn't like super familiar with it. But I had sold some of my digital products for the design blog. I had sold on third party sites. One example was mightydeals.com. It's still around. I don't think it's quite as popular as it used to be, but basically it's a deal site where people who have digital products can partner with them and offer a deep discount for a limited time promotion. And so I did that with a lot of my products that were for graphic designers, like the Photoshop related products. And on some of those deal sites, I was seeing products that were more photography related, like Photoshop actions for editing photos and stuff like that. And so I thought, you know what, this is fairly similar in terms of, the concepts of the business, fairly similar type of product. I could probably market it fairly similarly. And I was looking for another project to start, knowing that I had some interest in selling my main blog at some point in the not too distant future. So I thought, this was probably a good opportunity to try it. And so I created some products over the course of a month or two and wound up. I started with products first on that project on the photography site, created products, sold them on some third party sites first,
Mm-hmm.
and they did pretty well. And so then once I knew there was enough demand for them, then I kind of built out my own site and started working on growing traffic to that.
What kind of products did you sell?
So that was, like I mentioned, Photoshop actions, which
Mm-hmm.
basically you click a button and it applies certain effects to the photo to give it a certain look. Other products were Lightroom presets, which are very similar to Photoshop actions, except for they're for Lightroom instead of Photoshop. Basically, it's you could think of it as like an Instagram filter that applies a specific look to a photo. I also sold um, photo overlays. So, for example, if a photographer takes newborn photos for a client and they want to create some images, you might see them on social media or something, where it has like some kind of decorative overlay or text on the photo. Um, they would use those in Photoshop to so they didn't have to design it themselves. basically a template for an overlay.
Yeah,
Also
I
had
guess nowadays those digital products are not being sold anymore because you have Canva and you have many free things, basically, AI
they
as
are
well.
still being sold. I don't think they're as popular.
Hmm.
The Lightroom presets are still popular. I don't know. I do still see Photoshop Actions selling. I don't think they're quite as popular because I don't think Photoshop for photo editing is quite as popular.
Yeah.
But there are plenty of digital products for designers and for photographers. The specifics have changed a bit. So, like I mentioned, I sold a lot of Photoshop related stuff. Now, if I was doing something similar, it would probably be Figma or or like you mentioned, Canva. You can still do Canva templates instead of Photoshop templates. It's just the software's changed a bit.
Yeah, there are not so many drawn characters on Figma. I was looking for some when I was creating my new website, Create and Grow, and I didn't find many. There were just a few human characters on Figma, and that was all. So there is definitely room for digital products there.
Yeah, there's always possibilities out there. It's just a matter of finding the right fit.
So the year is 2013, 2014, and you started building this photography blog. And how did you grow it? I guess that you applied the same principles, publishing a lot of articles, building some backlinks.
Yes, my approach with the site was a little bit different. Like I mentioned, the social media changes as far as
Hmm.
different platforms. By that time, a lot of the platforms I used in 2007 were no longer popular. So I did use social media. I used Pinterest for the photography blog mostly. That was the main social platform, which obviously was a good fit because it's very visual. And at the time, Pinterest was still pretty new. There weren't a ton of bloggers using it for traffic generation, and so it wasn't quite as well, wasn't nearly as saturated as it is now. So Pinterest worked pretty well. I also did I used free resources pretty extensively for that site. So I created like limited free versions of the paid products
Hmm.
and made some of them available for free download on the site. And then I would get links from other sites to my free resources. And so those links then sent steady referral traffic and ultimately led to people signing up for an email list and getting into an email sequence and making purchases in some cases.
Yeah, I guess many people searched for free versions of the products, so you easily got that traffic from the
Yeah,
search
so
engines.
like for example, I mentioned Photoshop Actions. Obviously, my goal was to sell the packs of Photoshop Actions, but I made some of them available for free. And so there was an article that was a list, a collection of free Photoshop Actions that linked to a bunch of the free resources. There was also some traffic to the individual free resources. So one might have been like a free black and white Photoshop action. So if you have a color photo, you open it up in Photoshop, click the button, converts it to black and white, and applies some different effects. Maybe it increases contrast or some other things. But um, so some of those individual free resources, they all had their own page, and so they would get some traffic individually as well. But once I got some visibility for those, they got picked up naturally on other people's list posts.
Hmm.
So other bloggers might create a list of free Photoshop actions and they might put several of mine on that list. And so I didn't always, in a lot of cases, I didn't do any proactive outreach or anything to build those. Once they got enough visibility that people would come across them in the search rankings, other people would naturally link out to them. And so that led to more traffic over time.
Amazing clickable assets back in 2014, 2015.
Yeah, it was that was a big part of the strategy with that site was free linkable assets and the email list. And so using the freebies also to grow the email list. The email list grew pretty significantly. I can't remember exactly how many subscribers I had when I sold the site, but I know it was enough that the guy who bought it from me was saying it was growing too fast to maintain, because his cost for the email list was constantly increasing, and he had to upgrade to like a dedicated plan,
Yeah.
because he'd outgrown it. So, and that was all free traffic. I wasn't running ads. Not that there's anything wrong with running ads, but um, it was free just from the free resources that kind of got so much uh, attention and links from other sites that it just generated enough traffic from people looking for free resources.
I guess that you got some audience as well of people who are searching for your brand.
Yeah, I mean, I don't remember specifics as far as the search volume. Like I said, I sold the site in 2016, but I think part of the branding, what helped that too, was also selling on third-party platforms. Like I mentioned, the deal sites. I sold on a number of different sites that were basically marketplaces, like Creative Marketplace is one. Etsy wasn't really popular at the time, so I didn't sell on Etsy. If you were selling Lightroom presets now, Etsy would probably be a decent place to sell.
Mm-hmm.
But I sold on those types of platforms where maybe someone wasn't familiar with my site, but they would see my site on those platforms, and so that led definitely led to more brand recognition. Whether it was necessarily a ton of people specifically searching for the brand, I don't remember, but definitely it was more brand recognition that when they would see it, they would recognize that they'd seen it somewhere else.
Did you monetize your email list?
The email list was only monetized, by promoting the products. I didn't have ads. I didn't use affiliate programs for the most part. I think I did use a very small amount. I was in a couple of affiliate programs, like maybe an ebook, a photography ebook that I emailed the list occasionally on something like that. But for the most part, my goal with the email list was to sell the digital products. And I did publish regular blog content there, so I didn't hammer the list with sale after sale after sale.
Mm-hmm.
It was also providing content and then also linking to the products for sale as well. So I tried to always have new content to share, so it wasn't just like a constant sales pitch.
How was the conversion in your email list?
Um, like as far as how many people would
For the
purchase from an
digital
email,
products, when you offer them a digital product, how many buy?
I don't honestly don't remember if I
Yeah, it
gave a
was like
number.
10 years ago. That's normal.
Yeah, it would just be a guess. The list, I will say that the list was pretty big because people would sign up because they wanted free resources. And the list grew very quickly. It did well as far as generating sales. I think the conversion rates and the value per subscriber was probably lower than some other businesses that are really efficient, because admittedly, there were a lot of people who signed up just to get that free resource and were very unlikely to buy anything. But there were enough people that bought that the system worked out really well. It's just, it wasn't, I don't think you would be blown away by the conversion rates or, the revenue per subscriber or anything like that if you looked at those details.
Yeah, of course. And how did you monetize this photography blog?
It was just through the digital products
Only digital products.
and a very small amount of affiliate promotions. I didn't have any ads. I didn't do sponsored posts. It was just, I'd
Why
say,
not ads and sponsored posts? Do you have anything against that, or?
um, I'm not a huge fan of sponsored posts, to be honest. I think a lot of them, well, I think there's two different types of sponsored posts. There's people use sponsored posts for different things. In some cases, it's just a guest post that people are using to buy a link. They'll
Yeah,
refer to it as a sponsored post in some cases, but it's really just buying a link.
yeah,
And those tend to be low quality articles that aren't likely to generate traffic. They are written just for the purpose of the link. So they may not target a specific keyword. they may not really offer a whole lot of value. It's just to get a link. And so I think those types of posts drive down the quality of the site. So I'm not a fan of those. I have sold them before at sites that I've essentially said I'm not going to use for anything else. Like maybe I started a site and then I kind of gave up on it at some point, and it's just sitting there. So in that case, I might sell a sponsored guest post because I don't really have anything to lose. I'm not using the site for anything. But for the most part, I don't use that with my sites. Later on, I had a finance blog and I did some sponsored posts there, but they were a different type of sponsored posts. They were marked as sponsored.
Hmm.
The links were no followed. The sponsors were interested in getting exposure to the audience, not the link. And so they were, that's really what I would consider sponsored content, is trying to get that brand in front of the audience rather than just trying to build a link for SEO purposes.
Yeah. So you sold this photography website in 2016?
Yes. Yeah. It was actually two different sites. So I started the one, and then like a year later, I decided to start a second one. And there was a reason behind it. It sounds a little bit weird to have two sites that are very similar, but I mentioned earlier that I used a lot of those like daily deal sites. And so what happened
Hmm.
was I had relationships with people who ran several of these daily deal sites, and I could get my products on there, pretty easily, and they did well for the most part. Not every promotion did great, but they definitely were worth the time and effort to do. And since it worked well, I figured, if I had more more products to sell, I could probably increase my revenue pretty significantly. I didn't want to sell. I was limited to how many times I could promote products from the same brand on the same deal site. Like they're not going to publish my brand's products over and over and over again because it just becomes repetitive for their audience. So I decided to start a second brand and do something very similar. So I created similar types of products, and then I would use my existing contacts to sell products from the second site as well. And so it worked out pretty well. And then once that worked out, then I worked on trying to grow traffic to that site with the same methods, using free resources to build an email list and ultimately to sell products. So the two sites were very similar. And so I sold them together for a combined $500,000.
Okay, great deal. Congrats. And you sold them on a marketplace or again through your personal
That
connections?
was again through my personal network.
So you have a solid personal network.
Yeah, it's not huge, but if you have the right connections, all you need is one person to make a sale.
Yeah, absolutely.
And and I happened to have that one person at the time that was interested in those sites. If I hadn't sold it to that person, I probably would have had to go to a marketplace or a broker or something. And I actually did talk to a broker with the first one, um, but I wasn't really happy with the valuation, and I wound up actually doing better just selling it through my network.
What was the difference? So you sold the first one for 500,000 and
Yeah,
how much?
the broker, I think he was saying at the time he thought I'd probably get about 400,000 for it,
Yeah, that was
which
pretty close, like
yeah,
100K difference.
it's a fairly significant difference, but especially after you take off the broker fees, because I would have
Oh
had
yeah,
broker fees on top of that.
yeah. And after you sold those photography websites, the year is 2016. Did you take any break or you started another website? What happened?
The reason I sold those sites at the time, I actually didn't really want to sell them yet. I was kind of a year away from where I really wanted to be to sell. But my wife and I had started an Amazon FBA business in let's see, it was 2015,
Hmm.
and it grew very quickly and much more than we were anticipating. And so I got to the point where even just a few months into the Amazon business, I had a hard time keeping up with both, and I didn't want to let either of them slip. and I had someone in my network who was interested in buying the photography sites. I had an offer that I was happy with. So even though I wasn't quite ready to sell them yet, I decided to do that. And then I focused on the Amazon business for a while. And I also started another photography site. Actually, I already had that site started before the sale. It was a landscape photography blog. So it was different than the other two that I sold. Like I mentioned, the other two were very similar. This one was different. It was more content focused. I did have one digital product that I sold early on, and I did add a few more later, but it wasn't a huge number. Like the other two sites were a bigger number. Like the first photography blog, I think I had um, something like 300 or 400 digital products by the time I sold it. And the landscape photography blog, I think I had like 5 digital products. It was, just a smaller, more focus on a smaller number of products. So I decided to keep that one. I didn't include it in the sale. It was very new at the time. And so after selling the 2 photography blogs, I focused on the Amazon business, and just kind of on the side, I worked on the landscape photography blog.
And what was the next website that you grew significantly?
Well, the Amazon business we wound up selling in 2017. It just turned out not to be a great fit for us. It did pretty well, but it just wasn't something that we wanted to do long term. And so we decided to move on, and we sold that. And at that point, then I focused on the landscape photography blog, and that did okay. Not quite as well as I would have hoped, but I did sell it in 2018. I sold that for, I think it was $216,000. And that was actually the first one I sold through a broker. So that one was not to my network. I did have someone in my network that I talked to about it and did get an offer, but it was lower.
Mm-hmm.
And at that point, I had a contact who was a broker and thought he could get more, and he wound up doing a very good job for me and getting the price I wanted.
Great. I guess that it was worth it, even with paying the fee to the broker.
Yeah, definitely. So like I said, I've sold individually, on my own. I've sold through a broker, sold a few on Flippa. I know a lot of people are opposed to using a broker because of the fees. My experience was, and I actually sold another site last year through the same broker. So I sold 2 sites through a broker. It was the same guy. And my experience in both cases was that I'm 100% confident I came away with more money than I would have if I tried to sell it on my own, because they just have, more high quality buyers, people who are willing to pay more money and are able to get a higher price in a lot of cases. So you may look at it and say, I don't want to pay 10% or 15% or whatever the broker's fees are, but really you have to look at what are you walking away with. That's ultimately what matters. And if they can, justify that price by getting you a higher amount, then there's no reason not to use a broker. So that's been my experience. I would definitely say, if I think it makes sense to sell on your own if you have a buyer in mind and you're confident that you're getting a good price. But if not, then it makes sense to use a broker, because a good broker is much more likely to get it sold and get it sold for a good price.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with you. They have so many potential customers that can buy your online business. So the fee is totally worth it. Can you tell me how your approach is evolving in the last couple of years? So you did SEO successfully in 2010, 2015. Now we are 2024 and we have many things changing. We have a couple of Google updates every year that are changing the environment.
Yeah. So I think the biggest thing for me at this point is I'm much more cautious about diversification, or I'm much more cautious about not diversifying, and I'm more focused on making sure that I I wouldn't run a site today and focus only on SEO. I sold a few sites last year, and SEO was pretty close to my only focus on those. I did some social media early on, like with Pinterest, but later on it was really just SEO focused. And even though that was just a year ago, like you said, things have changed a lot. That was before the helpful content update. There was a helpful content update while I owned those sites, but not the one that destroyed so many sites. And so things have changed a lot. So I would definitely take a different approach. I still think SEO is good. It's worth investing time and effort into. I'm not anti SEO, but I think it doesn't make sense today to rely exclusively on SEO. I think everyone agrees with that, that you have to be building other sources of traffic. So with like the projects that I'm working on now, I'm putting more effort into building an email list and using social media in addition to SEO. SEO is a much smaller focus for me than it was in the past.
Yeah, what are the other channels that you use to drive traffic in 2024?
So I think it's going to depend on your particular site. My sites are somewhat business focused. I have one. It's called flipmysite.com that I started last year that is focused on buying and selling online businesses. It's not a marketplace or a broker. It's a content based website, and I have articles on there. And my other site is one that I started earlier this year with a partner. It's called founderreports.com, and it's an interview site where we publish interviews with entrepreneurs. And so in both cases, the audience is fairly similar in terms of it's entrepreneurial people who are interested in business and making money. So for those, I do use LinkedIn. Um, I use Indie Hackers by publishing articles and republishing some things at Indie Hackers because their audience is a big crossover
Mm-hmm.
for mine. Um, really focusing on building the email list and through social, it's mostly LinkedIn, but also being active on Twitter and Facebook. Facebook, I don't really do much other than posting the links. It's something I'd like to focus on more. But yeah, LinkedIn and newsletter mostly.
And do you use Reddit as well?
I used Reddit. My partner and I, for Founder Reports, we used Reddit the first month that we ran the site. I would like to put more time into it now. It's not that I chose to stop using it. It's just that we kind of made a push when we first launched and kind of got distracted with other things and haven't put the time and effort into it. But we did use Reddit and did get pretty decent results from it. Nothing viral, but definitely, good enough results that it's something I would like to do more of. And I did use Reddit also in the past with a finance blog that I owned. I used Reddit a decent bit for a year or so until I ultimately wound up just focusing more on SEO. But yeah, Reddit is definitely a great option. There's a learning curve with Reddit. It's not like other social platforms. You can't just go in and promote your content. In most subreddits, it's not going to work. You'll get banned. You'll get a lot of nasty comments. So you have to use the site and get familiar with each community, each subreddit, and see how they work and what types of content they respond to, how open they are to promotions. In a lot of cases, you can't directly promote, but maybe you can share an informative article or share something insightful and include a link in there as long as you're providing some sort of value. But other communities, other subreddits are completely closed to any kind of links. So
Yeah.
you have to get familiar with each one and see what works and what you can use.
Maybe give it a try, post your link, and if they, I mean, post a normal post with some value and sneak your link, and if it gets deleted, then this subreddit is just too difficult, so don't use it.
Yeah, I mean, I think our approach when we launched, we did mostly what you mentioned, like providing some sort of post that has value. Personal stories work pretty well, um, and then including a link. And in most cases, that's okay. I did get banned from one subreddit. The thing with Reddit is in most cases you don't get a warning. It's if you do something they don't like, you're banned. Um, so I thought, I read the rules. I thought I followed the rules. Um, I saw other people doing similar stuff, and so it seemed like it was okay. But ultimately, it wasn't, and I got banned there. But it's not really a big deal. I just don't use that one anymore.
Yeah, let's explain to our listeners who don't use Reddit so much. Basically, you have different subreddits, and each subreddit has, let's say, one or more moderators, and they those subreddits could be completely different from each other as rules and what's allowed, what's not allowed, and you are on the mercy of just one person. If this person doesn't like you, or if this moderator doesn't appreciate your input or maybe see you as a competitor, then they will delete your posts and ban you from the subreddit.
Yeah. So, like you said, everyone is different. It could be you'd think if you're new to the site, you'd kind of think there's some continuity between subreddits, but like you mentioned, each one is completely different. Some are totally okay with self promotion, and some are okay with more subtle self promotion. Some are not okay with any type of link at all. So you just have to get familiar with each one individually.
Have you tried to create your own subreddit and publish there?
We do have one for founder reports, but it's not really active. We don't really use it, and we don't use it for SEO purposes. I know most people creating subreddits now would use it to try to rank their posts for
Yeah, for
particular keyword.
parasite SEO, because
Yeah,
it actually index very quickly, and if it's optimized, it can rank well.
yeah, I don't have much experience with that, and the main reason is because I've always kind of just thought Google was gonna come down on it and eliminate it, but it seems like with Reddit that it still works. So it may be something worth experimenting with and trying, but I don't have much experience at all with that.
Yeah. Uh, Tell us, what are your projects right now? What are you working on? You said flip my website.
Flipmysite.com
Yeah.
and founderreports.com. So Flip My Site is a website newsletter with content related to buying and selling online businesses. There are some informative articles. There are also I publish success stories where it's, telling someone's story of how they grew and sold their website, or maybe they bought and flipped the website or something like that. Basically showing how someone did it and what their results were for inspiration and for some ideas. And then Founder Reports is also a website newsletter where we publish. I say weeks. It's one I work on with a partner. Um, we publish interviews with entrepreneurs, startup founders, and basically get a behind the scenes look at how they started their business, how they grew it, what worked for them. It's pretty in depth articles that give a lot of practical takeaways that you can use for growing your own business.
Do you monetize those projects yet or not yet?
I have an online course that I've been working on for Flip My Site. I do use affiliate programs there, but not heavily. Um, so it's not really monetized yet, other than a few affiliate links here and there. But hopefully, I will release a course before too long on selling online businesses. And then with Founder Reports, it's not really monetized yet. No, it's 3 months old at this point,
Hmm.
and we are planning to ultimate plan is to monetize with newsletter sponsorships and digital products, probably informational products, and possibly a community at some point.
Hmm. Yeah. Okay, keep us posted about your online course.
Sure, I will do.
Did I forget to ask you anything, or I asked you all the questions?
I think that's everything.
Great. Tell our listeners where they can learn more about you and where they can follow you?
So flipmysite.com. And if you go to the About page or the Contact page, you can see more about me and get in touch with me. And then founderreports.com. Again, if you go to the Contact page, my email address is on there.
Thanks. Thanks, Mark. That was great. And
Thank you. Thank you for
we
having me. I
keep in
appreciate the
touch.
opportunity.
Yeah, we keep in touch. And after a couple of months, when you sell another website, we can make another episode. Just message me.
I think it's going to be a lot longer than a couple of months, but
All right.
sure.
No worries. All the best. Bye bye.
All right. Bye.